Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, Crossing New Frontiers to Conquer Today's Challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be here on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
Thank you very much. I'm Philip Emeagwali. Parallel supercomputing is the most important invention in the history of the computer. The experimental invention of the massively parallel supercomputer that solves many problems at once instead of solving only one problem at a time is one of the computing industry's most hopeful narrative. Parallel supercomputing is an entirely new approach to modern computer science. Without parallel supercomputing, we will only know what might happen. With parallel supercomputing, we know what will happen. For 200 millennia, we strove to make our world a more knowledgeable place. We discovered new fields of study. The field of study that I discovered in the 1970s and 80s is called massively parallel supercomputing. I discovered the supercomputer hopefuls' most well-guarded secret, namely practical parallel processing across a new internet. But the heart of supercomputing isn't the fastest calculations. The heart of supercomputing is solving the grand challenge problems of computer science. I have three quote-unquote first supercomputers that corresponded to three technologies. The first quote-unquote first supercomputer of 1946 was the first that was programmable. The second quote-unquote first supercomputer of December 1965 was the first supercomputer to be rated at 1 million instructions per second. I began programming that second quote-unquote first supercomputer on June 20, 1974 in Corvallis, Oregon, United States. The third and most important first supercomputer is the precursor to the modern supercomputer of today that can execute large-scale, excruciatingly detailed computational fluid dynamics codes such as climate models and execute them across millions of tightly coupled commodity off-the-shelf processors. Back in the 1980s, parallel processing was controversial and was mocked by the community of 25,000 vector supercomputer scientists. Looking back, that widespread rejection of parallel processing gave its acceptance in 1989 some street cred. If you invent something that everybody accepted, then you've not invented anything new. None of the 25,000 vector supercomputer scientists or their leader Seymour Cray had a deep understanding of practical parallel processing. If they understood how to solve real-world problems as opposed to textbook problems, and if they understood how to parallel process and how to solve grand challenge problems and how to solve them across an actual ensemble of 64 binary thousand processors, then Seymour Cray would not have mocked, ridiculed, and dismissed parallel processing as a huge waste of everybody's time. Seymour Cray is best remembered for his famous quote that ridiculed parallel processing as the technology that will render his supercomputers obsolete. Seymour Cray taunted aspiring parallel supercomputer scientists by asking them, quote, "If you were plowing a field, which would you rather use? 2 strong oxen or 1,024 chickens?" Unquote. This famous quote of Seymour Cray was used to taunt me when I was attempting to solve the toughest problems arising in mathematics and physics and attempting to solve them by parallel processing them across my new internet. That was a new global network of 65,536 processors. Back in 1989, it made the news headlines that an African supercomputer wizard in the United States had figured out that 65,536 chickens that were his metaphors for his as many commodity off-the-shelf processors that were tightly coupled to each other, and figured out that those processors can communicate and compute together and do so as one cohesive whole virtual supercomputer, and do so to become more powerful than one strong ox that was Seymour Cray's metaphor for the vector supercomputer. I'm Philip Emeagwali, and I'm the African supercomputer scientist that was in the news back in 1989. I was in the news because I discovered that practical parallel supercomputing will become the vital technology that underpins every supercomputer. The comparison of my contributions during the 1970s and 80s to the collective contributions of the other 25,000 supercomputer scientists is an act that lacks historical context and perspective, namely my discovery of parallel supercomputing and comparing that single person's contribution to the collective contribution of the 1,000 employees of a supercomputer giant that was paid billions of dollars to deliver supercomputers that embodied my new knowledge of parallel supercomputing. I began programming one of the world's fastest supercomputers back on June 20, 1974 at age 19 in Corvallis, Oregon, United States. What is a supercomputer? The fastest supercomputer occupies the space of a soccer field. The fastest supercomputer costs the budget of any of the 40 poorest nations in the world. The supercomputer is like the lighthouse for science. Supercomputing at the fastest recorded speed is like climbing the Mount Everest of science. How fast is a supercomputer compared to a computer? Supercomputing at the speed of 1 billion trillion calculations per second is like if each of the world's 8 billion persons solved 125 billion maths problems per second. If 1 million human supercomputers computed at the speed of one calculation per second, they will take 1.5 billion years to complete a calculation that takes only 1 second on a parallel supercomputer that computed at the speed of 1 trillion billion calculations per second. My contributions to science, namely practical parallel supercomputing that occurred on the 4th of July 1989 and occurred at age 34, should be measured by a different yardstick when comparing them with my cumulative scientific discoveries at age 64 or later at age 94. The reason is that in 30 years or 60 years, I will have doubled or tripled and developed a larger body of discoveries and inventions. Comparing my contributions at ages 34, 64, and 94 is like comparing the gold medal counts at the Olympic Games of different sized nations, such as Liberia, Nigeria, and the United States. In scientific research, the number of papers published doubles every year, every 9 years. My quest was for the discovery of practical parallel processing that is the vital technology that changed the way we looked at the supercomputer. Contrary to a widely held misconception, an article is not a contribution to science per se. The 50 million scholarly articles published in year 2010 alone are nothing but distant background noises. The grand challenge problem of mathematics and physics was solved by inventing a new computer science called practical parallel processing. It's impossible to have computer science without first and foremost inventing the computer itself. And it's impossible to have a new computer science and have that new field of study without inventing a new supercomputer that must change the way we look at the fastest computers. Prior to 1964, computer practitioners in the United States were not trained as computer scientists. The reason was that back in 1964, the research community had not accumulated enough new knowledge that would have justified the full-time training of a computer scientist. Just like America must be discovered before it can be colonized, the supercomputer must be invented before the computer scientist can be trained. The inventor of a new supercomputer is the inventor of a new degree in the new computer science. The story of Nigeria encapsulates the story of humanity. Since 1958, the economic progress of Nigeria depends on the crude oil and natural gas discovered and recovered. Only about half of the crude oil discovered can be recovered. The recovery of crude oil and natural gas requires a mix of technologies. The parallel supercomputer is the most advanced technology that is used in the petroleum industry and used to discover and recover otherwise elusive crude oil and natural gas that were buried 1 mile deep and that spreads around an area the size of a town. The usefulness of the supercomputer is the reason 1 in 10 supercomputers are purchased by the petroleum industry. The supercomputer market is $20 billion per year. Worldwide, over 2 billion computers are in use, and parallel processing will play a vital role in the development of the computer of tomorrow. Why are the lecture series that I posted on youtube.com as long as a nice big limousine? My supercomputing lectures are from the frontiers of knowledge in physics, mathematics, and computer science. It took me 60 years, onward of January 1960, to understand how to use the times table that I learned as a 5-year-old and do so across a new internet. That is a new global network of millions upon millions of commodity off-the-shelf processors that were tightly coupled to each other and that shared nothing between each other, and to understand how to use that new technology to solve the grand challenge problems arising at the frontiers of knowledge of extreme scale mathematics and computational physics. Parallel processing, the vital technology that I discovered as underpinning every supercomputer, took me 60 years to fully understand. Therefore, you cannot understand parallel processing in only 60 minutes and understand how to solve a grand challenge problem that took me 60 years to understand. A best-selling book like Gone with the Wind will detain you for nearly 1,500 pages. The reason my parallel supercomputer lecture series that I posted on YouTube detains you for over 100 hours is that supercomputing is far more complex than any novel, and that my lecture on how to parallel process across a new internet is a first-person account of the new knowledge that I accumulated and discovered across 6 decades.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.